Okay, greetings. Ooh, getting down, getting down to the nitty gritty here towards the holidays. Hope everyone's doing okay. Thought I would continue working, working on the railroad, working on this system. It's interesting. It's been a challenge. Been a challenge. I'm just letting folks know on the main channel. Starting up a stream. On the other channel. I don't, that's the one thing with YouTube. I mean, there was multiple things with YouTube. I just don't know how efficacious these community messages are for getting people in short term. I probably will have to duck to my phone or do something. Where's my broken glasses? Here we go. To do some social mediaing to get people. It's a frustration. It's a frustration, but we're not gonna worry about that. We're not gonna worry about it. The word will get out, or I'll just be blathering to myself. Either way, we'll get things done. I'm trying to clean up my workspace here a little bit. Okay. So I was saying one of the interesting things about this kind of exercise is I kind of have all the pieces to this system in my head because the main piece is really just doing the skill stuff and the permutations of that because just about everything here is a skill test. In other words, to use the I don't know, not a skill test. Let's move that. Not a skill test. Sorry, that's not exactly right. Let's see. What am I talking about? I'm thinking about um the skill system. All the different things you're doing all count on the same skill system, which is D6 dice pool, and that I've had for a little while since I published it. Since I published it a few months ago. I'm streaming. Come hang out. But I guess it's what I'm struggling to get out here is that you have it on your head, but still getting it down on paper or the page, the whatever digital version of the page, and then also figuring out kind of what you feel like you need to have versus what it's okay, even good maybe to leave. How you trying to make? I'm not trying to make something super crunchy. I think the kind of whole purpose of this is so that the whole concept for me is that you can internalize the system pretty quickly, and then you don't need to have a bunch of rules lookups. You just have your content, and you can make really quick notations if you need or want to set how difficult something is. You can quickly make a notation, and then you can go. And then when I'm reading it, if I'm writing something that I'm reading later, that simple notation translates immediately into what I need to know, and then we can play it out and kind of hash. And because how many dice you're rolling, it's pretty easy to determine because what level are you? Okay, you're rolling that amount of dice, and then I can just have a really simple notation like HD for monsters. I'm as you see in my materials from the wilderness and everything uses HD. Even for characters, it's hero dice. For locations, it's hazard dice. For monsters, you could use hit dice or hazard dice, whatever you want to use. But basically, it's HD for everybody. So once I have that HD number, that's like 99% of the work is done. Oh, you need to do this terrible. This is whatever you need to do this thing, and it's really hard. I just put an HD number by. Oh, has an HD of 2. That tells me you need 2 successes to basically overcome it. That's kind of all I need, and I don't really mean for there to be. I mean, really, it's going to be up to whoever's playing it. I don't necessarily mean that you have to roll dice all the time for these difficulties, but it can inform you and the party and the players to then come up with how you want to handle particular challenges. Um, and I don't think I'm gonna get into that because I really feel like that's a personal thing between the GM, you the people, however you're kind of running it. But it is interesting, at least for me, that there's a sort of paralysis in this final bit. Like I really just need to get all this stuff out there, and yet there's this kind of paralyzing fact that like blank page blank page comes into it a little bit. And maybe it's me. I'm sure I'm not the only one that suffers from this. It's like, oh, I've got it all out there, but I just need to get it done. And I just need to write it out. Well, I did a little bit of work between episodes, if you will. And one of the things I did was hold on one second. I created a couple more skill sets. For, what am I doing here? Yeah, no, give me my channel. Give me live. So we went through this before. I had Warfare or Warcraft. I don't know what I'll end up calling it. Something like that. Stealth. Something I really liked is, they're different. The progression of thief skills isn't the same across all of them. They make, I guess, Gygax and Arneson or whomever, they made choices as to which skill, which skills would go up at certain times. Not certain times, not right. What the progression. So they didn't have it. What I'm trying to say is not all the 4 or 5 thief skills had the same progression. They had different progressions. So some would go up. Some of them started at a higher level, and others were lower, and then they'd kind of go up with their own rates. I'm not sure if there's a real rhyme or reason behind that. I don't know if they felt like, oh yeah, it makes more sense that thieves get better at these things. So I'm sure you could. I have not analyzed it in any great detail, and I don't wish to. But part of what I'm kind of digging on this particular system is you can get something similar to that. But this time you can kind of either use a bunch of these preset kind of pre-gen classes, if you will, or kind of build your own. That you, for example, as a thief type, could choose which ones they want to be better at first, which ones they want to be lagging behind. So you can't be great at all of them, but you can set up your progression. I want to be really good at the stealth stuff and the stuff that's more that what I'm calling guile, which is more you're being kind of shifty with your hands and whatnot. I'm going to be less good at that one. Or I really want to be good at the guile stuff and I'll be less good at sneaking. Or I want to be really good at sneaking and, maybe I don't even want the guile part. I want I want to be more outdoorsy, so I'm going to take survival. So you have all these different permutations you can take. I did look at that character progression and we kind of worked that towards the end. So the simplest character progression is basically just start off with, I'm not sure if, so one of the things I thought about was instead of using points, which at the character generation, you pick one primary and one secondary skill. And your primary skill is the one that levels up the fastest. Your secondary skill levels up a little bit slowly, and then further on you can get a third, a tertiary skill, and I think I even have a quaternary skill, though maybe I'll get rid of it and do something else. I don't know, but I think it kind of makes sense. So at a 10th level character, you have 4 skills. 1 is the best one's at expert. 2, your secondary and tertiary ones become the same. At that 10th level, your tertiary skill catches up in a sense to your secondary skill. So you end up with something you're an expert at, 2 things you're skilled at, and then 1 thing that you're trained at. So that would be, and I feel like that's pretty good. So I think it gives a lot of room. And I think what I'm going to do, I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, but I think I like the idea of seasonality, of like you do stuff and then you kind of season the sort of your year end. And I like the idea that in winter you don't do much in terms of adventuring because it's the conditions are just horrible. So you can't get anywhere. Nobody wants to leave. And kind of you're spending the year basically jockeying to get so that your winter's in a good spot, that you have the money that you need to get through the winter, that maybe you can be in a good spot. If you can get invited to court somewhere, hey, great. If you can get in, if you could get in with a certain important person, great. And this is where I think you can have a lot of your secondary things like learning languages could be part of that. Like, hey, what do you want to do? You want to learn a new language? Okay, instead of having it it's hardwired in a skill or just hardwired in a character creation, saying you only get 1, then maybe you can that winter season. You can say, okay, you're going to go with a language, and then you could do that, or something like that. So some of these things that maybe don't feel like they would fit a whole thing. I don't want to make a whole skill set that's languages, but I want people to maybe learn more languages because I think it's really something that's only useful as a GM. Yeah, the more languages your character knows, the more the characters know, your players know, the more, or your player characters know, the more that they can interact with the world different ways. So I want to encourage it. But I don't want it to be free. I want there to be a price. And of course, there's only so many seasons you're going to get before you basically retire. Then you are kind of limited to how much of those secondary things. I'm not sure what other ones there might be. You have to think about it, but that could be one. Hey, Ryan. So Ryan says maybe a jack of all trades would have 3 secondary skills before tertiary for folks who like lots of bad options. Yeah, though I think I would probably, I don't disagree with you, Ryan, but I think that's part of where the system, we can help you. As a system, we can help you. We could say, you know what, you can't do that. You're going to be naturally a little bit better on one thing than another. And this is good for both the player, right? I think ultimately it's good for the player. Because is any character they might be thinking of really a jack of all trades? Like there's really, like Batman, I don't know, you might say, well, he's really good at these 3 things. Yeah, but he's probably, if you want to pick one thing, he's probably the best at, investigation, let's say, over technology. Something like that, right? He's not Tony Stark. Right? Tony Stark might be the best technologist, but he's not as good as investigating as Batman is, right? Batman isn't building totally power suits and with all that stuff. He's still using more, in a sense, Batman uses more conventional, and I don't really know Batman all that well. Heck, I don't even know Iron Man all that well. So it may be factors of a lot of different reasons, but if we just take, say, kind of movie, broadly speaking, movie Batman versus movie Iron Man, though I know movie Batman doesn't actually do, I guess depending on which movie version you're talking about, doesn't do all that much. It doesn't seem like he's out there investigating, but I think Batman always was pitched, I think, as the ultimate detective. So say, okay, your detective stuff is number 1. Your technologist stuff is great, but it's not out of the realm of what other people do. And the kind of technology Batman has is that the forms are kind of unconventional, but and someone can correct me, but it doesn't feel like it's out of line for what people could, most people could do. Whereas Stark is kind of on a level sort of all his own. And they muddy the waters with, Stain and Reed Richards if you're doing comics. But, if you look at it kind of in the movies where he's sort of the lone technologist around, then it's like, okay, right. So you can look at 2 Batman versus Iron Man in a sense. You can look and say, well, Iron Man's really great at technology. And the other thing, Batman's really great at investigating. He's pretty good at technology. So in any given moment, they're close enough that maybe Batman could out tech Stark, but it's not likely. And Stark is probably not going to be able to out-detect Batman, right, kind of thing. But I would think I'd want to, I think I'm okay with forcing people or saying, like, no, you got to pick one. Pick something that you're going to hang your hat on. Of course, I don't even know if I'd really need to say, like, work, put that language in, work with your referee to do whatever. But, that would be the point, right? If you as the referee, because I think what I kind of got lost in the weeds of saying is I've added a couple of categories. We even have more categories than I did before. So you want to work with your GM. If you're playing in a game and it's like, hey, survival's not a thing. We're doing a urban thing, and urban whatever, and hunting, foraging, and camping, and maybe even navigating. I don't know if navigating is worth putting another point. I wouldn't even be averse to having navigation kind of being its own thing. And I wouldn't also be averse if we want to switch these into more diegetic jobs, kind of like Barbarians of Lemuria does, where you just say, hey, I'm a sailor. And you guys talk about what sailing means, and then that gives you kind of heads up. But for now, it's under survival, which I do think makes sense. I wouldn't even, like I was going to say, I wouldn't even matter if we had something like seamanship or something, because I don't think, a boat captain doesn't necessarily know anything about hunting and foraging or camping. He's going to know about navigating, I think, no matter what, and obviously fishing, potentially, whatever, right? I could see some of these sort of doubling up if you want to, but, okay, we're not going to be doing much survival work, so you probably don't want to pick that as your primary one. You might want to, it still might be worthwhile as your secondary or tertiary thing, or even later on if you get that high where you get a 4th one, because there might be those times where you leave, but this is mostly going to be inside, inside City 1 or whatever, inside a Greyhawk City, so we're not concerned about that stuff. The ones I added at the bottom here, medicine, which I don't know how I forgot about, which is good, and then skullduggery, where I'm putting a couple of these backstab I just decided to put in there, and forgery and disguise. So now as a thief, you have a lot of options, which maybe it's too many options. I don't know, but you can go heavy on, you can go first stealth, then guile, then skullduggery ultimately, or you can go, you have these 3 choices, and even though I was listening to somebody, I put on Bear the Gen X GM's stream earlier, and I was just kind of listening to it for a bit, and they were talking about how they don't like D20 because D20 doesn't give you a lot of there's not a lot of granularity in D20. 5%, right? Okay, so you get 5%. They're coming from, I think he's a big basic role playing, so the D100. So obviously a 100 D100 percentage system, percentile, percentage, whatever, is going to have more granularity than a D20. 20 options versus 100 options. And they're saying how characters kind of felt samey to them. I don't know that I've felt that to be true in D&D and D21s, and certainly I hear we're going D6s in terms of the mechanics. Yeah, the mechanics are going to feel samey, I guess. But at the same time, I think I'm happy with the amount of permutations that you can get out of this. And what I would probably put in here is make your own skill sets. You don't have to take whatever I've got. Throw them together, because you could easily, like I said, swap in jobs. If you want to say, oh, I was a navigator, I was a ship's captain, I was a sailor, I was a whatever, and then do it that way. That's also completely fine. And of course, when you're doing jobs, the nice thing is that there can be a bunch of overlap. It doesn't matter so much. Oh, you were a caravan leader? Well, you're going to have some navigation things. Oh, you were a navigator, literally a navigator on a boat? You're going to have navigation also. They come from different areas. Fictionally, they might actually use different techniques to do it, but you're both doing it, which is fine. I'm using these to kind of put it out in terms of the sort of categories, categories of stuff. So skullduggery, medicine, culture. Still haven't quite figured out what this holiness is, or just fervor, piety, favor, survival, sorcery, guile, stealth, and then warcraft or warfare. Hey, Terrence. Terrence says there's never too many options. Well, I don't know. Is that true? Is there never too... I kind of feel like there is. I think you don't want to get into the analysis paralysis bit, but I would think that ultimately what I'm hoping to have with this is that here's this little book, digital whatever that you have, and then you will go through and you figure out what kind of game you're going to run. And then kind of in almost, I don't want to say in a GURPS-like way, but kind of in a GURPS-like way where you can then say, like, this stuff we're having, this stuff we're not. Like, right, okay, we're in a city, so survival, we're not worried about survival. We're doing something where you're kind of a blades in the darky, sort of, I don't know, you're sort of gang members and turf wars and things like that in the city. So you're not ever getting out there. But there might be some other thing. Maybe because that is our specific niche that we'll want to break out some of these and make them, because you could easily say, well, we're just going to have sneaking, hiding, backstabbing. They're each going to be their own, kind of break it out more granularly than I am, which I think would also be totally fine. And I'm kind of happy with this character progression now. If we're going to use this more complex one, your primary skill set is trained. You get a secondary skill set that you're familiar. And then this is the only, if you want to call it a quote-unquote dead level. Second level, you just get another hit die. Nothing particular happens. Third level, you gain a third skill set. And then at fourth level, your primary skill set goes up. At fifth level, your secondary skill set goes up. Excuse me. At sixth level, you get a fourth one that you're just familiar with, and then at seventh level, your third skill one goes up. Eighth level, your primary one goes up. Ninth level, your secondary one goes up again, and at 10th level, the last one, that third one goes up again. Terrence says, Steet skills roll to make the non-binding bathtub gin. Yes, you could probably do that. I don't know what, or non-blinding, I was going to say, I don't know what a non-binding gin would be. Yes, but non-blinding, I mean, is the blindness, maybe that's the point, right? I don't know. Maybe you want to make people blind because your real operation is you sell the sticks, or you train seeing eye dogs. So you're all about that gin making them blind, then they got to come to you and get their, whatever they call those tapping, I don't want to call stick, seems like not the thing. What is, I'm sure there's some kind of technical name for that. I don't know what it is. Still haven't figured out what to do with the alignment powers. That's fine. That could even be a optional kind of dealio. So I'm not sure. So the next thing I think I need to do, well, there are a couple of things I need to do. One, I got to figure out to do with spells. I could bring in. I don't think I went over this on stream. Look at that, a bunch of my videos. I don't think I went over this on stream, so I might as well just go. We can go through it here. Hold on a minute, if I can find it. First, I gotta find it. Then I can. Hold on a minute, it's not there. Okay, no, it is here. That was weird. Okay. Oh, I got a lot of stuff. Hold on, let me clear out my PDF reader. I got too much stuff going on. Hold on a minute, just clearing some stuff out. Okay, no, don't need you. All right, there we go. All right, let me move this over here. Whoop. Where was that? That was kind of cool. No. Where are you? Where are you? No. Where the heck? No, which one? Oh, maybe because it's full screen. Is that it? Look at all those tabs. Yeah, boy. Okay. There we go. So, this I threw out. What was it for? Did I put it out there for a, yeah, I think I did this as part of a jam. Sometimes these jams are nice. I mean, jams are fun. Jams, I'm talking about game jams, these kind of game design jams. They have them for video games. I think that they probably started with video games, and then the concept's been carried into other things like tabletop games. And basically, a bunch of people a bunch of people join up over a specific period of time to work on something that's with a theme. There's usually some kind of theme or something about it that is uniting everything together. Sometimes people do our systems. That seems to be a common thing now. You were releasing your own indie system of whatever. You try to organize a game jam to help promote your game and get community interest up in your game and that sort of thing. So you might say, okay, hey, we're doing maybe if I did one, we're doing the Do Anything D6 jam. And so for the next month, write something. It just has to use my system or some aspect of my system. And on Itch makes it very easy to do it because they have pages for jams. You can put all your rules down and blah, 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 and you can put it out there. And then when you're done, you can look at all the submissions. And it's kind of a nice thing. As a participant, they're like any of the challenges that you might get, like Sword Timber or whatever kind of challenge. It's just a way of motivating you to get something done. And I think sometimes having the sort of theme or some kind of binding factor, whether it's a particular system, and they don't all have to be a system. Sometimes a theme, like, oh, hey, we're doing a Halloween theme. We want to do something about something Halloweeny. That I think Hex Crawloween was kind of like that. It didn't have a set in stone. It had to be Halloween themed, but I do a Hex Crawl in a month. Or we're going to do something about, I see one that's up now that I might do something for if I can get around to it because it's due in a couple days, is do something about trains. Something tabletop that includes trains. Do something with trains. Something like that. So they can help, almost it's like as a writing prompt, you can look at the subject or the restrictions around a jam. It can help be kind of a writing prompt of sorts. This one was for one where it had to be just blank, or not, it had to be blank. It had to be plain text. So you're not supposed to get in the weeds on the formatting. You're not really supposed to format it at all, or as little as possible. And I think once the jam is over, it might be over now. I'll have to check if it's technically it's ended or not. But then I'll go back and I'll put up a nicer version. But it basically had to be plain text, which I liked because you can get, that's one of the things you can definitely get, at least I will definitely get tripped up on, is trying to lay things out and kind of do that. And you're trying to laying it out sometimes. When I'm really disciplined, I can write it without laying it out. But then I start thinking about the layout, and you can get, like I said, you can get in the weeds on it. It can be real annoying. So having someone that says like, no, you cannot, you must not, you will not lay it out. You will not do anything at all. No formatting. Just kind of a get her done in the easiest, simplest way possible, which is basically just markdown or just the simplest level of text. And that's it. So so that I threw this out here because, again, talking about having trouble getting, even though I have the idea in my brain, getting it down on paper. This is one of them. So this was This is a drink of watered down apple cider for the working man. This is called the Dictates of Korra, magician of the highest order, as found on the 3 tablets of gold discovered at the site of the ancient temple to the Oracle of all knowledge. I basically, really looking at, this is the Sinbad movies, particularly the one with Tom Baker, was kind of my inspiration for this. And I decided to write it, or at least this first part, as if it was a kind of a found piece. There it says, plain text, can hear Ben Milton having a heart attack. Yeah. Yep. No pretty pictures, no pretty layout, no 8 different kinds of bullets. Just plain text. All right, the Manual of Sorcery. Magic is pain, magic is power. If you are to become a sorcerer, this you must remember above all. There is no spell making without suffering. Look well at a sorcerer's scars, for it is the memory of each of those pains lived and survived that grants them magic. The first lesson. See there that candle. You wish to make a flame alight upon its wick? How can you if you do not truly understand fire, if you haven't touched it, felt the burn of its kiss against your flesh? The same is true of all things. To know them, one must seek them out, touch them, feel the burn of them, and bring the scar of it back with you to remember. The second lesson. We are the conduit, but not the source. The source resides with the eldest things, the most powerful things in existence. It is us who are the namers, the callers, the beseechers. To catch a fleeting, flickering moment of their thought, we must know their name, their want, and their dominion. It is as little use to call upon, and I was thinking I was going to, if this was a fancy version, I would have put a name in and had something cross it out, but XXX, so it's unknown. The water mother, to light that candle as it is to plead with a fire demon to summon water. The third lesson, there is always a price. The eldest things always exact a toll for their service. Always. If no price is set in a bargain, do not think it is free. Only a foolish wizard will act like a fish on a hook, who, given a slack line, forgets their doom. The fourth lesson. The easiest spells to cast are the ones that mimic our own natures. These are the scars of our very birth into the universe. Thus, such spells are said to be of the first circle. We enter the second circle when we cast spells invoking animals, plants, and other mundane creatures of the world. The third circle comprises those abilities of the strange, supernatural, or weird. Finally, in the fourth circle are those powers which fall under the purview of those gods and beings who are beyond our reckoning and exist above and apart of our material realm. The fifth lesson. The most important law for the magician is the law of correspondence. Like attracts like. Through manipulation of a thing, we can connect it to affect a like thing. In so doing, we reduce the strain of our casting. As the spider build webs from the source to you, to the desired thing, and avoid those things in antipathy with your work. The sixth lesson. Magic is power, and we are a conduit to manifest that power. Magic is also pain, and we can be a conduit to that as well. The tools of the sorcerer, the wand, the staff, the luminous gem, they are not mere instruments of performance, but vital tools. We extend ourselves into these objects, and thus can pass some of the cost of our casting into them as well. You will learn which objects are the stronger, and how. That is part of your journey. So that's it. So basically, this is kind of an in fiction concept of magic, right? And so then I have some notes. Spells cost health, i.e. hit points to cast. The cost is 1d6 per circle of the spell. If I were to import that in here, it would be 1 hit die. So 1 hit die, which is, so one of your hero dice, whatever, 1 die per level. The cost is 1d6 per circle of the spell. Spells that cause damage do 1, basically d6. Well, not basically, exactly. 1d6 per spell circle. They can be upcast, quote unquote, by adding a die of cost for each die of added damage. That would roll over also. If you wanted to cast something that was damaging and you didn't want to do 1 die, you wanted to do 2, it would cost you 2 dice. Casting distance. Distance between the caster and the object of their spell also affects the cost. And then I have basically some ranges within reach. Basically, can you touch it within a mile? Oh no, within reach might be kind of like if you could throw something, hit it. Not quite within touch. So within reach, within a mile, within a day's flight of a crow, somewhere within the same realm, outside the bounds of space, right? All those are basically different levels. Casting as performance. The casting of magic is a performance. The caster must speak loudly or make elaborate movements. This expresses their will, desire, and sincerity. Casting takes 1 round to perform. At minimum, spending minutes to cast will reduce the cost by 1 per 10 minutes. So in other words, if you're doing it, you can do it kind of in a combat. That would be 1 round. But if you wanted to take longer and use a turn, i.e. an exploration turn, 10 minutes, you could do that and it would reduce the cost. Spending days will reduce it even more. Sacrifices made during rituals can also reduce costs in the amount of 1 per HD or 1,000 gold pieces of value spent ritually. So that last part's more for the NPC type sorcerers, but sacrificing things or people to make spells happen, I think, is a commonly used trope. So I always like to figure out, well, how does that work in this case? And that's how it works. Proper instruments attuned to the caster provide some small respite from casting cost. Not every stick should make a wand, nor every fallen branch a staff. A wand will absorb 1 damage, a stave 2, and a staff 3. Caster can sacrifice their implement to double their damage absorbing powers. All spells do a minimum of 1 damage per circle spell regardless. So you can't totally dodge all the cost of the spell, but you can dodge some. So in my system, it would always be, you're always going to take a hit die of damage regardless. But if you're casting something that's 3 and you can use these other means, you can drop it down to 1 per level. So right, if you're casting a third circle spell, it's always going to cost 3. 4 is always going to cost 4. Objects of correspondence. Other tools, namely object of correspondence, can serve 1 of 3 purposes. They can reduce damage by 1 per object. They can increase the difficulty of resisting the spell. Basically, you can modulate, try to make it harder to save. Or they can increase the efficacy of the spell. Objects must be held in sight or deliberately arranged in a ritual space to be effective. So you can't call on something that's in another room. It's got to be something that's kind of in your, you got to be using it in some way. If it's not in sight because you made your pentagram and the thing you're using is in the thing behind you, it's part of your ritual space. That's fine. If it's something else, like you're holding it in your hand, I've got a lock of your hair, and so bazap, right? That would be, you're holding it. So you have to be using it in some way, but you have to be using it. What's the word I'm looking for? It has to be, deliberate. Sustaining spells that are sustained incur additional costs. If it's a moment, basically a round, minutes, obviously minutes, days, or then longer or permanent. And then, in addition to casting for specific effects, the magic user may attempt to craft an arrangement or other bargain with an elder entity. Roll a reaction roll for the entity with any modifiers in accordance with how well the magic user has aligned with the entity's desires and how much of an offering is made. The more positive the reaction, the more favorable the reception. They will never act for the magic user without a fee, and the greater the ask, the greater the cost. And that's basically it. So we're talking about 2. I mean, really, if I was laying, I'm using just the default margins and everything. This really could be 2 pages. One for the in fiction thing, and then one for the notes. I think it's pretty easy. I'll drop a link to it. I've dropped links to it before. I'll drop a link to it again in the show description and in the chat. It's free. It's on itch. So I could bring that in. So I guess I went through that all to show, like, that's the system I have. Yes, I wrote it for using hit points, but I could easily rewrite it for using hit dice. I think it has the kind of sword and sorcery vibe that I like a lot. It is definitely going to be different, very different flavor than kind of your BX style magic. Whoops. View source. No, not what I was looking for. To BX style magic, but could be fun. And the other idea the concept that comes with this, I don't think I mentioned it. It didn't make the cut. I didn't mention it so much, but it's mentioned in the fictional thing. The thing that I like about this is that you have to go out, if you're the sorcerer, where does it say there? Yeah, okay, the first lesson, right? See the candle. You want to put a flame on the candle? You can't do it if you don't understand fire. How do you understand fire? You have to touch it, you have to feel the burn, and you bring back the scar. You bring the scar of it back. So the concept here is a couple things. Let's say you want to have a paralyzing touch. And you're thinking about it. Okay, I want to, as a player and probably as a sorcerer too. It's one of those things where you can think about it on a player level or on a character level. They kind of amount to the same. All right. I want a paralyzing touch, like a ghoul. A ghoul is fairly low level, right? A ghoul, I don't know, like how many hit dice does a ghoul have? It's not too bad. I have my books are down there. Do I have? I know I opened basic not that long ago. Oh, that's expert. Where's basic? Is basic around? I don't have it. That's expert. Okay. If I can find it, I'll look for it. Any case. All right. I need or I want this ghoul. There it is. Hold on a minute. There we go. So we go to monsters. So you say, all right. And this is something where it would be, you would do the research. You could do the research. All right. You want a paralyzing kind of touch. So we'll go down and you think, you know what? You do the thing that the thing that you know touches ghouls, which are only two hit dice. Right? Okay. But what you have to do as a sorcerer is you have to go and get paralyzed by a ghoul. Or at least get potentially paralyzed for the ghoul. I don't even know. This is something where I would leave it up to the GMs. Did they go and they actually have to get paralyzed, which is also really interesting, or do they have to go and just? I think maybe I actually, you know what? I think I might rule. You probably have to get paralyzed. That's the scar. You have been paralyzed. You get paralyzed for a ghoul. You obviously have to survive the encounter. Then, if you wanted to come back and then after you've survived that encounter. Because remember, we're not doing the written spells. This is I guess the thing is also, this is kind of ad hoc casting. So you're just, but the way it works is that you have to, magic is about mimicking. I guess ultimately what it is magic is mimicking. I mean, there's magic in the world. There's kind of supernatural effects happening. There are ghouls who are paralyzed people by touching them. There's a Medusa that turns people to stone. There's dragons flying, all this stuff. In order for you to do it, you, Mr. Magic User, or Ms. Magic User, or just, a Magic User, what you're doing it with your spelling is you're trying to mimic what they do naturally or supernaturally. That's part of their natures. That's what spell casting in this concept of this dictates of Kura is. It's spelling is mimicry. So how do you learn something enough to be able to try to mimic it through your spells? You have to experience it. You can't just look at it. You can't just see it from a distance. I mean, I think the examples where you could are things like, let me finish off the Ghoul example. So now to cast, you want to grab somebody and touch them. You have to say loud words, whatever you have to have felt. If you're going to do it the ghoulish way. And there could be other ways to do it. That's kind of, I think, some of the fun of this is there may be a multitude of different ways you could potentially paralyze somebody. There are different creatures that do different effects, right? You grab somebody and utter some word to paralyze them. What does that spell look like? Well, you have been paralyzed from the ghoul, so you kind of know it. And you could add a roll to right now. I don't have the concept of, you got to add roll. I'm just saying you got to do it. You could decide if you wanted to add a roll on top, though. I think I probably wouldn't because I don't want it to be unfair. I mean, what I like about the system is the sorcerer has to really put themselves into harm's way to get stuff. You want to learn how to basically drop a dragon's breath on somebody? Great. Go get blown on by a dragon and come back. And then come back to me then. So any magic user that can do that kind of thing has had to pay a price. Or be really lucky, or have figured something out, which to me is all the kind of magic user stuff. You want to think about why a wizard might have a tower that's above a menagerie with all kinds of creatures in it. This is why. So that they can do things in a very safe kind of way. Okay, so I'm going to put a ghoul in a cage, and then I'm going to stand on the other side of the cage, and they're going to paralyze me, but they're not going to be able to eat my face off because they're going to be on the wrong side of the cage. But if I can work this whole setup, then I can learn that ghoul's touch. Like, okay, and I'm not putting myself at risk. That is why wizards do some of the weird things wizards do. It's because they need to do these experiments kind of on themselves. And if they're smart and they have the resources, they'll try to do it without having to just go into a tomb and close their eyes and wait for a ghoul to grab them. But anyway, in terms of the casting of the spell, So a ghoul is a. Hold on a minute. Where's the thing? Yeah. So a ghoul is not first circle because the wizard's not a ghoul. It's not in the second circle either because it's not a natural or I would say mundane creature. It's not. Right. So this is in the. It's not. It also is not the fourth circle because it's not a power of the gods. Now, the power of the gods, you might say, if you were trying to raise a ghoul, like you're trying to create a ghoul, that might be a godlike thing. Unless there's some natural creature that does, you might say, yeah, that's like the god of undead who's doing that. So you want to raise undead. That's a fourth circle thing. But so it was third circle, which it would kind of correspond to third level, but you can mitigate those costs down. So okay, so you can cast the spells within reach. So it's a third circle, but you're not adding anything to it. So okay, within reach, +0, great. You have to do your thing. This is probably a combat thing, and you stand there for 10 minutes while I do this ritual to freeze you. Probably not going to work. But you could have a staff, a wand, or a stave. Whatever it is, you could have a gem on the end of it that also can help correspond. So you can essentially you can mitigate that cost down, and then however long it takes. Though I would say this probably isn't a sustaining thing. Like this is not something you need to sustain. I would say it happens. You're using the effect. I'm thinking of sustaining spell. I mean, if you had teleport would be a fourth circle spell, right? But if you had teleport and you wanted to keep the circle open, that would be like you're sustaining it. Like you're keeping you're slicing open space time and you're holding it there, something like that. Or maybe I think an example. I think maybe flight. You're flying in some way that might be something that's sustained. For this one, I say no. That's kind of the ghoul's natural. That's just part of the touch. So they're paralyzed for X amount of time. So I'd say, we don't have to worry about sustaining. But that could be another way to make it either harder or mitigate it. The bottom line is some things are going to be easier in this system for a wizard to cast than other ones. Flight is an interesting one because it depends on how the flight is, because there are many things that fly. Some things hover in the air. You have birds. Birds, if you're using a bird or say a bat, if you wanted to keep it kind of mystical, a bat is second circle because it's basically a mundane creature, right? But if you call upon somebody to give you the flight of a bat, what does that mean? You're going to, and this I don't get into either, but I probably have to write this in there. You're going to gain. I use an example I put up on Itch was if someone called upon some demon to give them the flight of the bat so they could get across some ravine. Well, what happens is they're granted bat wings, but the wings actually painfully grow out of their body, right? Which kind of is nice because it's a fictional way of saying, oh, this is why it costs a hit die to do this, because your bones are literally shifting and temporarily as these wings are then breaking out of you, coming out, and you get these big wings, and you're able to fly across. And then I think in that version, you had to sustain it. Like it wasn't just, oh great, now I've got bat wings for as long as I want. I was like, no, that's going to come. I think I explained it like, well, the demons being mercurial creatures might be a funny joke for them to have them terminate your flight right as you're over the highest point, like Icarus, and all of a sudden your wings melt or disappear or whatever happens. So no, you might need to pay to sustain it. Or maybe I didn't have it sustained, but I had it say like, you don't know when these are going to go away, so you can't trust it, kind of thing. But in any case, that would be what happens. You get the flight, but you get the flight kind of that. Like if it was a hummingbird, it would be the same thing, but you get hummingbird kind of wings. Or a dragonfly sort of wings. So again, I like it because you can take two wizards casting the same spell, but because of no difference other than their personalities or what they've seen. So if you're playing someone who's like, they love butterflies, then that's what their spell is going to look like. Somebody else wants to be a dark, brooding necromancer. Well, theirs is going to look like bat wings. that's what they're gonna look like. I mean, I know nothing against bats. Well, bats get a bad rap. I don't know why. It's got to be the necromancer with the bats, but that's just how we have it right now, right? So whatever. But they, same spell, take very different things, and they're all player as a function of the player. I, as the GM, don't have to say like, well, I'll reskin this for you. It's like, no, how are you doing this? And then you can also play with, well, how does these entities help you? Because one of the things I was thinking about is if you're contacting, say, a creature that is who's say a goddess or a demon who's with say death is their domain, right? Then what you might need to use in terms of objects of correspondence, if you want to, and what shape it takes might be different. So if you were contacting the goddess of death, Hela, give me the power of bat's flight, maybe she would give you wings, but they would just be, instead of being living bat wings, they would do these wings of bone. They would still work for you, but they would look horrible and, whatever. Maybe your face would take on kind of a skeletal thing because you're using this kind of power of death to do this, as opposed to the goddess of gardens who gives you wings and you smell like flowers and things like that, right? It could be different. Terrence says, the Led Zeppelin album cover death. Yes, they give me the power of lighter than air dirigible transport. Yeah, could happen. So I think I could really just port this into here. I think. And kind of just say like, yep, we're going for this first one. The vibe is sword and sorcery. We're going to port that. And you can also, I think the other thing you could do is really you could just cast spells. Like the easiest way might be, hey, just bring BYO, bring your own spells. They've got levels. And then they work basically the same way as I just said. You'll spend your hit dice to cast spells, limited by your sorcery. Obviously, what you can kind of spend. And there you go. Bada bing, bada boom. You got a spell. And then scrolls. I'm not sure how scrolls would work. I like the idea of scrolls. I probably wouldn't want to get rid of scrolls. It's a trope, magicians writing things down, then reading them later. Makes sense. Spell books, things like that. And so I'd probably want to have that, but it might be related to rituals. And it might be that this is the thing that, like, if spell casting, you have to be at least familiar. Familiarity. Maybe scrolls. If you have the spell book and you can cast the spell, but there might be limits to what you do. Obviously though, you could only since if you're not familiar, you get half your dice pool. I probably would say that you have to have at least, if you're a first level character and you don't have familiarity with sorcery, then you don't have enough dice to do it. It's kind of impossible for you unless there's some way to get you those dice, which to me also makes sense. And then the other thing that I need to do, which I kind of have lined up because it's very easy, is combat. Like, how does combat work? Right? Maybe I'll put that over here. Right? How does combat? Actually, I should probably make this another listicle thing. Yeah, let's do that. Alignment powers. I think combat should be red, so I'm going to change you to purple. And I'll make you red. Combat. No, oh, sorry. No. Come on, Ouija. Work with me here. There we go. So the very basics. Hit dice equal to your warfare dice pool. Damage equals 1 hit die for normal weapons. I'll probably look at something like Wolves on the Coast or something similar for giving some weapons some little quirks or perks or things to make choosing them more. And then basically you're knocked out or sort of defeat, knockout, if all HD, let me see. If all not lost within single round. This is kind of that troop format from the chainmail. You roll, if you're a third 3 hit die warrior, then to get knocked out, you have to take 3 damage in a round. So you kind of get a lot better. You get a lot more effective as you level up. So that second level fighter, it's not just, I can take two hits before I go down in the combat. It's no, I can take 2 hits in each round of combat. So I gotta get hit twice in one round to go down. So it's not like, I get hit once, the peasant hit me once in round 1. Round 2, the peasant still has hit me twice. It's not, now I'm down to 1. It's like, no, you got to hit down. So each level really, you really feel that progression. And that's why when you get to that kind of heroic level, you're getting level 4, 5, 6, and that range, if you can make it that far in those kinds of games, man, you feel like some certain really low level enemies have no chance against you unless they have a lot of force. Because a bunch of peasants, you need a bunch. If you're a 5th level fighter and you're armored up and you come into 8 or 10 peasants, those peasants better hope they're not surprised. Something like that. But then, at a certain point, how many peasants can even get whacks on you every round? And then it's like they basically all have to hit you, which means if you're rolling, let's say you have 5 hit dice and you're up against 8 peasants, and we're just going to say that all the peasants can get licks on you. This turn, we're just kind of playing loosey-goosey, kind of grand melee type thing. For the peasant faction to win, to knock you out, they've got of their 8 dice, they have to roll 5 6s. 5 6s out of 8 dice. Can it be done? Yeah, sure. Is it likely to happen? No. And then you, maybe the other side, maybe you have to roll a 4, 5, or 6. So you have a 50% chance, and you're rolling 5 dice. So there's a good likelihood that 3, 4, 5 of those peasants are all going to be wiped out in that first round. And then once those, so once you've wiped out, say 4 of those peasants, if you manage to get 4, I mean, not even counting things like a morale break, something like that. But then they can't, you get them down to 4. Now there are 4 peasants from the 8. They cannot hit you. I mean, they can't kill you. They just even if they all roll 6s, it's unless you allow some kind of exploding something or other. And I could see adding that to certain dice, like, if you get some 6s, you can re-roll them for more 6s, something like that. But other than that, they're toast. They might as well surrender. And it's a really interesting method because on the one hand, you lose a little bit. I mean, you don't lose it entirely, but that sense of anybody can take you down. Right? You cannot be a jerk, Sir Knight, at 5th level because these peasants can still take you down, and that's still possible. You just need a lot more peasants, potentially. But there's also that really fun thing of like, you want to see kind of Conan just going to town on a bunch of mooks and goons and just slicing them. Like that's that kind of thing. Like Conan in his underwear, running around, slicing through the town guards. That's kind of what it looks like. It's just like, even though they may have because now that Conan's defending as, Lightfoot, but they're only, because these guards, they're not that good. They're only Lightfoot. So they're, he's really on their level defensively. It doesn't really matter because he's so good offensively. And they are, even that their offense and defense at this point are equally matched, it still means they got to roll like maybe a 5 or a 6, let's say. 6-sided dice, so the chances of these guards getting a hit in is low. And then say he's a superhero, he's got 8 hit dice. So the chance of these guards getting 8, like maybe they again, it might be a situation where I've got 6 guards, even if all 6 of them, I roll really well and all 6 of them hit, I still can't take Conan down. So, they're probably going to run away or do whatever. Or Conan just rages through them with his pantherish, whatever they call it, his pantherish skill, or I don't know, his tigerish ferocity. And yeah, and that's kind of what that looks like. So anyway, the basics, we got that down. Your hit dice is equal to your warfare dice pool, which basically means that if you're totally unfamiliar with warfare, you're going to take whatever your HD are and have them. Other than that, it's going to be some variety of your full. Once you get up to familiar, you get your full pool, and then you just go through that. You gotta take out somebody by doing more damage, and I think I'd have that concept of like a stunt. You can spend HD to take additional actions. So, something like that. I've been playing around with the idea of having to spend dice to do things. It would work. I'm trying to think, because I know this was something that was when I played in the Dungeon Keys Dirtbags game. It was very fun, where you could conceptually, it was fun to allot dice to do different things. The problem was we never did it. I don't know if there's a scenario that we were playing, but the idea was that I have five action dice, basically. So what you could do is, so here's the scenario. You're, and I'll use this as a fantasy scenario. You are at you're at the back of the tavern. Bad guy making a break for the front door. There's there's been a bar fight, so there's obstacles. There's basically stuff in between you and them. So what you want to do is this fighter's like, I want to throw a knife. I want to leap over a fallen table and sprint to the door. So you say, okay, those are three actions. So then you would decide how many dice to roll, and then you'd take those successes and you'd go in order. Did I get a success? Yes. Then I threw the knife, and then you could. I don't even know if you have to make some kind of additional thing for throwing the knife. You might even, because I forget, because you've got something for what you do with different types of weapons. But anyway, so you throw the knife. So maybe that scores a hit. You do some damage, whatever that is. So okay, did I get a second success? Yes. Then you were able to vault over the table. And if you failed that second one, then, and remember, you're not spending them out of order. So if you only got one success, then the first thing was to see, the next two is fail. So there's nothing like, oh, I had a success on the third action, I didn't get to use it. It wouldn't work that way. In any case, if you got your second success, then yeah, you were able to vault over the table. Third success, you're right on their heels leaving. It reads really cool. And I know that, I'm pretty sure D6 Star Wars, I think, does something similar, where you're taking the dice and you can spend them to do things like that. But I've read D6 Star Wars, and I need to pull it back out again. I haven't read in a long time. But I haven't played D6 Star Wars. And with Dirtbags, I think there was maybe one. I think I used it once. There was a situation where I think I wanted to do something and get backtrack. And so I had to roll. It's like, okay, I'm going to roll this many dice, and something like that. We didn't end up using it very much. Now, I like the idea, in theory, of you spending the more dice you have, the more you can spend. Or no, sorry, the more dice you have, the more potential actions you have. So that if you're a high level character in one round, you could do a bunch of stuff. Now you're dividing up your strength, or your dice, so that if you're stunting all over the place, let's say, oh, I'm leaping over this, I'm jumping on here, I'm running across the room. Yeah, you're doing all this stuff, but then when you attack, you might be down to 3. You might have started with 8 dice, but now you've spent a bunch of them, and now you're down to 3. 3 dice. You spread yourself thin. The thing is that I'm not sure about is the time factor. How much time does that take? If everybody's doing a bunch of that, is it taking a lot of time? Now, the resolution's quick. Okay, you're setting some things out, roll a bunch of dice. Great. But does the time take too long? But I like it in theory. So we'll see. We'll see. And that's, I think I'm going to use, I'm going to wrap it up here because I'm at the end of the hour. Well, I'll keep plugging away. Let me know what your thoughts are Maybe I should look up an actual play. It's probably a good thing to do. See if there's an actual play of D6 Star Wars, so I can check out kind of what they're doing. I think that's all I got. So, folks, I'm gonna keep working on this. I got some other stuff brewing between here and the main channel, so to speak. So, look for that stuff. Obviously, the holidays are right around the corner, or so. Probably going to be a little quiet for me for a bit from, definitely kind of next week into New Year's, but we'll see what breaks I get and what kind of inspiration strikes. But anyhow, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.